December 3, 1957. Sycamore, Illinois. A small town 60 miles west of Chicago, wrapped in the quiet of winter. Christmas lights twinkled on porches. Families prepared for the holidays. It was the kind of place where children could walk freely, neighbors waved from their front yards, and people left doors unlocked at night. But on this bitter December evening, the illusion of safety would be shattered forever. 7-year-old Maria Ridulph, a cheerful second grader with brown hair and a trusting smile, begged her mother to let her play outside after supper. Like most children in Sycamore, Maria loved the snow. Together with her best friend, Kathy Sigmund, the two girls bundled up in coats and scarves and headed into the neighborhood streets. They played a game they called Duck the Cars, hiding behind trees whenever headlights approached. Their laughter echoed into the frosty night air. It was then, under the dim glow of a streetlight, that a man approached. He introduced himself as Johnny. To the girls he appeared friendly, perhaps in his 20s. He wore a multicolored sweater and spoke warmly, offering piggyback rides. Kathy remembered his smile, the kind of smile that seemed trustworthy to two children. Maria, innocent and playful, immediately took to him. But then Kathy ran home to grab her mittens. When she returned only a few minutes later, Maria and Johnny were gone. At first, Kathy thought maybe Maria had slipped inside her house. But when the Ridulph family checked, Maria was nowhere to be found. The minutes stretched into hours. By midnight, fear gripped the Ridulph household. The police were called, and neighbors rushed into the snowy night with flashlights. They called Maria's name into the cold wind. Dogs barked. Search parties swept alleys, garages, and nearby fields. But Sycamore's little girl was gone. That night, a shadow fell over the town. And the name Johnny would become etched into history. The disappearance of a child in 1950s America was unthinkable, especially in a small town where everyone knew each other. Sycamore was supposed to be safe. Now it was a town in panic. By dawn, December 4th, the story had already spread. The FBI was called in, making it one of the first child abduction cases to receive national attention. Volunteers joined the search in droves, combing cornfields, barns, and frozen creeks. Parents clutched their children tighter. Doors that had once been left unlocked were now bolted shut. Maria's parents, Michael and Frances Ridulph, were devastated. The family's home became a base of operations, crowded with police officers, agents, and reporters. Her father pleaded for her safe return, while her mother, exhausted, clung to the hope that Maria was simply lost, not taken. The only witness was 8-year-old Kathy Sigmund, a child herself. Terrified and confused, she told investigators about the man named Johnny. She described his friendly manner, the piggyback rides, and how Maria had seemed comfortable walking away with him. Her testimony was the only real lead. The FBI built sketches based on Kathy's description. Soon, thousands of wanted posters flooded Illinois and beyond. Agents knocked on doors, questioning known offenders, drifters, and anyone who even remotely matched the sketch. But the trail was already growing cold. The man named Johnny had vanished into the night, and so had Maria. As days turned into weeks, the Ridulph family endured a nightmare of uncertainty. Christmas came and went. Maria's presence sat unopened under the tree. Sycamore was paralyzed by fear. And then, nearly 5 months later, a grim discovery was made in a remote wooded area nearly 100 miles away. It was Maria. Her small body, reduced to little more than bones, was found beneath fallen branches. The long wait for answers had ended in tragedy. But the mystery of who Johnny really was, and why he had taken her, had only just begun. The discovery of Maria's body in the spring of 1958 devastated Sycamore. Her remains were found by 2 hikers near a wooded area close to Woodbine, Illinois, nearly 100 miles from her home. The once bright little girl was gone, her life cut short in the most chilling way. The official cause of death was difficult to determine because of decomposition, but investigators suspected foul play from the very beginning. The case was now a full-scale murder investigation. For the FBI and local police, this became one of the largest manhunts of the era. They interviewed hundreds of people, chased down countless tips, and followed trails across multiple states. But for all their efforts, nothing stuck. The only solid lead remained Kathy's account of Johnny. But Kathy was just 8 years old. Her description, though earnest, was vague. A man in his 20s, dark hair, friendly smile, wearing a multicolored sweater. Investigators released sketches, hoping someone would recognize him. Several suspects emerged. One of the early names was John Tessier, a young man from Sycamore. Tessier, later known as Jack McCullough, had a questionable reputation in town. He was 18 at the time of Maria's disappearance and lived only a few blocks away from the Ridulph family. He had access to a car and his name, John, matched Johnny. But when questioned back in 1957, Tessier provided an alibi. He claimed he had been traveling to Chicago that night to enlist in the Air Force. Records seemed to support his story and the FBI cleared him. To them, Johnny had simply disappeared, a ghost who left no trace. The years passed. The 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s. New tragedies captured America's attention. But for Sycamore, the memory of Maria lingered like a wound that never healed. Her parents grew old without answers. Kathy, the friend who had last seen her alive, carried the burden of that night for the rest of her life. Still, the case never fully closed. It remained open but unsolved, a haunting reminder that justice had not been served. Then, in the 1990s and 2000s, a strange thing happened. Rumors began to resurface. Old suspicions were whispered about John Tessier, the boy from Sycamore who had been cleared so long ago. Some people had never believed his alibi. Others recalled unsettling details from his past. And in 2008, more than 50 years after Maria's disappearance, a phone call would breathe new life into the coldest of cold cases. More than half a century had passed since Maria Ridulph's disappearance. Many of the original investigators had long since retired, and some had even died. But the case had never been forgotten. In 2008, a phone call changed everything. A woman named Janet Tessier contacted authorities. She claimed that her mother, on her deathbed in 1994, had whispered a chilling confession. Those two little girls, John did it. Her mother had been referring to Maria Ridulph. Janet explained that her brother, John Tessier, who now went by Jack McCullough, had always been troubled. She recalled incidents of abuse, manipulation, and a darkness in him that terrified her. She insisted he had been responsible for Maria's abduction all those years ago. The lead was enough for investigators to reopen the case. The FBI revisited files that had collected dust for decades. They re-examined John Tessier's alibi and discovered inconsistencies. For example, phone records suggested he might not have been where he claimed to be. In 2011, Jack McCullough, then in his 70s and living in Washington state, was arrested for the murder of Maria Ridulph. The cold case that had haunted Sycamore for generations was suddenly alive again. The news rocked the community. After all these years, had Johnny finally been caught? The trial of Jack McCullough began in 2012. For the Ridulph family, it was the moment they had prayed for, the chance for justice. Prosecutors painted McCullough as a manipulative predator who had lured Maria away under the guise of friendliness. They emphasized that his name, John, matched Johnny. They highlighted inconsistencies in his alibi and testimony from his own half-sister, Janet, who stood firmly against him. Most haunting of all was the testimony of Kathy Sigmund, Maria's childhood friend. Now an adult in her 60s, she took the stand and identified McCullough as the man she had seen that night in 1957. Her voice trembled as she recalled the memory she had carried for more than 5 decades. Maria smiling, Johnny giving piggyback rides, and then the moment her friend vanished forever. The jury was swayed. In September 2012, Jack McCullough was found guilty of the kidnapping and murder of Maria Ridulph. He was sentenced to life in prison. For the Ridulph family, it felt like closure. Maria's brother and surviving relatives expressed relief that justice had finally been served. The community of Sycamore breathed a sigh of resolution after 55 years of unanswered questions. But the story was far from over. Not everyone believed McCullough was guilty. In 2016, startling developments cast serious doubt on the conviction. A review of the case by prosecutors found that McCullough's alibi might have been stronger than originally thought. Records showed he had made a phone call from Rockford, Illinois, nearly 40 miles away from Sycamore, at the time Maria was believed to have been abducted. Further forensic reviews questioned whether the evidence used to convict him had been misinterpreted or even flawed. Some argued that memories from 1957, recalled decades later, were unreliable. The conviction began to unravel. In April 2016, Jack McCullough's conviction was vacated, and he was released from prison. By 2017, all charges were formally dismissed. The state declared him actually innocent. For Maria's surviving family members, it was devastating. After decades of waiting, their sense of closure had been ripped away. Some still believed McCullough was guilty. Others were left in limbo, unsure of what to believe. The case had returned to where it began. Unanswered questions, no clear resolution, and a community haunted by doubt. The murder of Maria Ridulph remains one of the longest-running unsolved cases in U.S. history. From the night she vanished in 1957 to the courtroom battles of the 2010s, her story is a chilling reminder of how fragile justice can be. For Sycamore, the case shattered the innocence of a small town and became a permanent scar on its history. For Maria's family, it was a lifelong grief, a daughter, a sister stolen too soon. For Kathy Sigmund, it was the burden of memory, being the last to see her friend alive. And for the justice system, it was a lesson in the complexity of cold cases, how fragile eyewitness testimony can be, how evidence can fade with time, and how closure may never truly come. To this day, no one knows with certainty who Johnny really was. Was Jack McCullough wrongfully accused, or was he a predator who slipped through the cracks of time and law? What is certain is that Maria Ridulph's case will never be forgotten. It stands as both a tragedy and a cautionary tale, about trust, about justice, and about the haunting endurance of unanswered questions.